Adam and Sherry face their own speed question. Is it Lowe's or Home Depot? This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates in Contra Costa County talk all things real estate based on their 35 years of experience. Hi, Sherry.
Hey, Adam. Welcome back.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I got a little vacation beard going here. You like that?
Yeah, I do like it.
Right
That's
now, it's barely more than razor stubble, but it's kind of Movember. I stopped shaving on Halloween just to scare all the little kids away.
good.
Um, I don't know if it's working or not.
As long as you keep
Uh,
it away.
and this is the day after the election. We are not going to talk politics, but the
Yeah.
one thing I could say for sure is that I'm grateful that all the emails asking me for money hopefully will take a hiatus before the next cycle begins, probably in about five minutes. But at least for right now, that's it.
And texts and
Oh,
to
I
you.
don't get the text. You get the text.
Oh, I got tons of texts. I got both actually.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. So we'll take a big exhale and then let's talk about real estate because that's more fun.
Oh, yay.
What's going on in the market? What sort of things do we see happening here in
Well,
November?
yeah, you and I have what, 4 or 5 escrows in the works, and we are seeing something in the market that we have not seen for a long time. And that is buyers and sellers negotiating repairs or credits or things like that. And we probably haven't seen that, I don't think, since maybe 2018.
Yeah, it's been a while since it's been as regular as it has been this fall. That's true.
So much so that when I had to write up a request for repairs last week, or maybe the week before, the form has changed. It's gone from 1 page to 2 pages, and I had to sit down and figure out how to fill it out. It has been that long since.
Yeah.
But yeah, the market is changing a little bit. Prices are still not coming down. They're flat, as we say. We still need inventory, but we have a ton of buyers out there. And like I always say, people will always need a place to live.
Yeah, it's interesting because we the request for repair that we got in the last day or so, the agent didn't even use the right form, and they're a newer agent. I don't think that they were even. I don't know whether they were licensed in 2018, but they've been licensed certainly less than I have.
Yeah.
And so even though they asked me what they should do, I said, well, you should fill out the request for repairs, and then as we respond to that, it will blend into that, include into it the contingency removal that the seller's not going to give a credit if they think the buyer's going to keep asking for more. And so, kind of as a final agreement, sure, you've done all of your research as you should as a buyer,
Yeah.
and you're asking for repair, and the seller then will say, yes, I'll credit you that much, but in exchange for it, I need to know the negotiation is over.
Yeah.
And he didn't even do that. So,
It's possible he's never used that form.
yeah, it very well may be. It's not uncommon for us to have to coach agents on the other side, best practices. I think that that is just one of the side effects of being a more experienced agent, that you get to coach agents even in a transaction.
Yeah, I remember my first transaction in the business. Bob O'Grady, the late great Bob O'Grady, was on the other side of it. And I had pretty good training, but I had not been through a transaction. And it was funny. We would finish doing one part of the transaction, and he would say, and now you're going to fill out a contingency removal document. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. And we made it through and it closed escrow.
Well, that was very kind of him to ask you the leading question. Uh,
He was helping me in the kindest possible way. He was a wonderful man. He eventually, at one point, ended up being my manager at Empire Realty Associates.
oh, interesting. All right. I don't think I realized that. Yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of like objection, counsel leading the witness.
but in a good way.
In the best way possible.
That's right.
Yes, yes,
Right.
we are.
Well, and I
Uh,
think that you and I have been doing some mentoring with other agents in our company, and I think we both agree that when we make other agents better, we're all better.
there can be. there's no level of professionalism that we can't raise to us at any level. So it's always nice to be able to raise the standards and raise the quality of everybody in our industry.
Yeah,
It's best for the clients and best for the transactions. It makes them all go smoother when we're all working at the highest level.
absolutely.
There's in negotiation, there's often times when people's feelings get hurt, and it's really important that you're operating professionally because it's very easy to get anxious about a deal falling apart.
Mhm.
And no agent wants to be the reason why a transaction goes sideways. And so the agents need to be able to be professional with each other. And then likewise, when they're talking with their clients, it's part of our actually our code of ethics not to speak poorly of other agents.
Yeah.
Um, and to make sure that we talk about the details without inflaming people's emotions because there's enough emotions involved when you're selling or buying a house already.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we're
so
supposed to be the unemotional ones. That's why people hire us so that buyers and sellers are not dealing with each other. And, can you imagine what that would look like with all the emotion that's involved?
yeah. Yeah, last year you may remember I had uh, uh, an interaction where I had to use a lawyer to represent me as part of a negotiation, and the party on the other side said something really inflammatory.
I do
I'm not sure
remember.
whether that's the right word, but it triggered me so much. I was surprised by how much it triggered me because usually I'm on the other side. I'm the helping professional as the intermediary, as operating as the agent. And I was talking with my brother because we it was a joint transaction we were doing with him, and I had to. He's like, "It's okay," and then I was like, "All right, this is why I'm using a lawyer. I can just tell our lawyer this is what our response is without actually having to go to the other person and say." You hurt my feelings when you said X, Y, and Z because it didn't really matter whether my feelings got hurt. The best outcome was going to come when my lawyer could present the counteroffer in a way that was could be heard without creating more problems, right? And I think the same thing happens in real estate. That this is one of many reasons why you want to hire an agent, but is negotiation can be painful when you're doing it directly because sometimes things can be misinterpreted. So
I told you about the time I was selling one of my houses. I still worked at Sotheby's. Rich Marino, also the late great Rich Marino, was my broker manager. And he said, Sherry, let me list the house for you and handle it for you. I won't charge you a commission. And I said, and his wife was sick and he had two little kids at home. Then he was trying to sell real estate and take care of those kids and, deal with his wife's situation. And I said, Rich, it's okay. I can handle it. It's okay. So I went ahead, listed my own house, and when time came to get into transaction, I got emotional about something. And I walked into his office one day. I was like crying, like, oh, Rich, you wouldn't believe what's going on with my transaction. And I thought, this is why I was supposed to have him handle it.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
How quickly we become the client,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That what is it? A lawyer is his own worst client. I mean, I think the same is true for real estate agents. So, ironically, our E&O insurance doesn't let us sell our own properties currently. That we have to use another agent. So, there's some wisdom in that because I think that we would mess it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we were talking about requests for repairs, which oftentimes ends up just being a credit rather than having the work done. And there's a lot of reasons why we might do that. But sometimes some of the repairs can be fairly simple and mundane. And I'm always surprised when simple things are asked for. But I think that kind of leads into our one of our speed round questions for us as agents, but really more thinking about sellers or just homeowners in general. Lowe's or Home Depot. How would you answer that speed round question?
I would say Bill's Ace Hardware on Mount Diablo Boulevard in Walnut Creek.
All right. I don't think that, yeah, I don't think
Well,
Bill
I
owns
don't
the one
think
on, I
Home
don't
Depot.
think Bill owns the one on Mount
Yeah.
Diablo and Walnut Creek.
Well,
I
he
think
owns
that
a couple others,
he does
so
own a couple of them.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I didn't know we could go off the board, but yeah, Ace Hardware.
Well,
Um,
we make the rules, we break the rules, right?
exactly. Well, I guess if we make it, yeah.
But
Um,
I have an aversion to Home Depot. I can't stand Home Depot. I've been known to cry in the light bulb aisle at Home Depot. Remember when you could just go in and buy a light bulb and you had like three choices, 50 watt, 75 watt, 100 watt, and you went and checked out? You were gone one time, and I was trying to buy light bulbs at Home Depot, and the aisle is filled with light bulbs. And I started to cry because I was so overwhelmed about what I was supposed to get. And you know me, I'm not a crier, despite talking about crying twice in the same podcast. But I just finally left and waited till you came back because I could not figure out what I was supposed to buy. I hate Home Depot.
The uh, so it used to be for a while that there I had a physical triggering effect walking in the Home Depot that I had to use the bathroom. And I think it was my body saying, "We don't want to be here.
Exactly.
We need to leave. We need to leave now." And I think so I mean just kind of comparing Home Depot and Lowe's for a little bit. Home Depot generically tends to have more product and more variety than Lowe's does, but Lowe's is always a cleaner store. Um, and I find that the help at Lowe's is always very friendly. And I don't want to characterize Home Depot's not being friendly because that's not true. But I can always find somebody who is ready to help me at Lowe's. Um, Whenever I have a question about something. If I have a question about which light bulb to get, or if there's something I need, I can't figure out what aisle it's in because it's just, and it turned out it was like on a shelf or something in the way back. And there's always somebody that either can answer the question for me or they will call somebody and figure out the answer. They won't leave me until they can walk me to the aisle where it is. And I don't quite get that level of service at Home Depot.
Yeah,
And
I agree with that. Absolutely.
yeah, and I think Home Depot caters more so to contractors. I think some contractors go to Lowe's, but I think Home Depot is more set up that way, which part of the reason why they don't have the same customer service is because the contractor knows more what they
They
want.
know what they want.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
even the app is set up kind of for contractors. I think, you take your phone and you input what you're looking for and when at a Home Depot, and then it pops up which aisle and which section it's in, and you can go right to it. Kind of eliminates supposedly the need for somebody to help you. Although I always like at Lowe's when somebody is willing to help me. So
so
I don't
I have to tell you about this great experience I actually had at Home Depot. Um, we had went to the one over in Martinez because we had a listing at on Woodview Court over there by Hidden Valley. And there was a mother and daughter, seemed to be fairly adventurous and competent, but
Mhm.
they were trying to get some what they needed to reseat a toilet, which is fairly common. So they needed like a wax seal,
Mhm.
but apparently they needed a few other things. Somebody had sent them to go get a small list of like three or four things to reseat this toilet. And they were like you, looking at this, all the different choices. There's some repair rings for how to reset the toilet, some bolts, the kind of bolts you might get. Does it have caps that are going to go over the top of it? Just all the little miscellaneous things you might need. And they were like just like you. They were at their end. You could just tell that there's too many choices, and it didn't seem complicated what they came for, but they couldn't figure it out. And I think one of them started to call whoever it sent them, a husband or a brother or somebody. And this guy started, so here, let me help you. What is it that you want? Not a Home Depot, but another customer. And then
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh, but they also need this. And the guy's, oh, yeah, that's right. You need that. And so between the two of us, we got them the three or four items that they wanted and they headed out. Because
Oh,
I just think that that's kind of the way, those of us that are not professional contractors, we got to look out for each other.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but they were so grateful because they're like, I couldn't get a hold of whoever it was anyway, and that they were very grateful for
Oh, I
these
have
two guys volunteering their expertise on how to reset a toilet.
That's a really good story.
Yeah.
I wonder what my
Well,
picture was when I was in the light bulb aisle.
I know, right?
Yes.
Um, well, we were going to actually talk a little, as you mentioned, Ace Hardware. So
Mhm.
originally we were talking about an idea for this episode. It was to talk about the local hardware store. And I almost get romantic about the hardware store because I think that those little stories was told about customer service
Yeah.
are just mere scratching the surface of what you get at a local hardware store.
Yeah.
Um, the one of the things about I think every community has a needs and has a hardware store because we all have just every little day things that you might want and you might need. And if you're not buying big lumber or something, there is no better place than going to whether it's Ace or True Value or whatever the
Mm,
national franchise is. Um, and one of my favorite hardware stores, which, well, two of them that are no longer around, one kind of is, that used to be in our area. One was Yardbirds.
yeah,
Yardbirds used to always have the best staff.
yeah,
And the
love
other
that.
one was when it was still Orchard Supply Hardware, both the one up in Moraga, and there was one in Pleasant Hill, and there was another one out in Concord. And
Yeah,
they were kind of a hybrid between the local hardware store. They had more merchandise than the local hardware store, but they were still, they had friendly staff that could always help you.
yeah.
Uh, do you have any memories of going to Yardbirds or any hardware store?
I love the Yardbirds in Alamo.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
that was a great location. I would drive down there. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it has turned into an Ace now.
Yes.
And it's still a good store. It's got a little nursery attached in a separate building on one side, and then the most amazing kitchen store as well, which I guess speaks to that audience. You know, Alamo's probably the most expensive place to live outside of Diablo in Contra
Yep.
Costa County, and everything in that kitchen store attached to that Ace. Who formerly Yardbirds is very expensive, but they've got the audience for it. It's fun to browse through there, but I kind of like the smaller ones, like the one I mentioned on Mount Diablo. It's a smaller store. It doesn't quite feel so overwhelming.
Right.
The one down in Alamo is big.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting, you were talking about kitchens store attached to it. Even like at the hardware store on Mount Diablo in Walnut Creek, they have a wide variety of things there. So you have everything from you could buy a skill saw to buying canning jars. In
Yeah,
fact, the hardware store is the best place to buy some of that canning stuff, quite frankly.
it's a lot less expensive than at the grocery store because you know I'm a jam maker.
Exactly. And, cleaning supplies, things you might use at your own house. And then every screw you could want. I mean, something breaks or you ordered something from IKEA and it was missing one screw.
Yeah.
You can't go to Home Depot and get that screw, but you can go to the hardware store and there'll be somebody there that will help you. Um,
Well,
I,
and don't forget that middle aisle at that Ace Hardware, which is all kind of gift items, candles and hand towels and decorative items for holidays. And I even bought a scarf there one time. They were selling scarves at the hardware. It was like, wow, this is kind of cute. I think I'll buy this. Um, but do you remember the day we went in there because we needed screws for something and you taught me how to find the right screw? I don't remember exactly.
yeah, so first of all, I would never buy anything in that center aisle, but that's what's great about the hardware store. Other people would, and that's what they have. Like, it appeals to a whole broad audience of shoppers and residents.
If you
So
ever
yeah,
need a last minute gift, it's a perfect spot. You can't go wrong in that middle aisle.
do you know how many M&Ms I have bought at Ace Hardware? It used to be that every time I went in and I bought something, whether it was for us or for home, and I never charged it I mean, like I always bought it separately, but like I was having peanut M&Ms like, 2 or 3 times a week for the longest time. So I had
Well,
to
they
break that habit.
because all that good stuff, the beef jerky and the Slim Jims and the M&Ms are all right where you're standing in line to wait to check out.
Of course, that's just not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. The,
The other
you
good
know,
thing
the
about that hardware store is the train that is elevated and
Yeah,
runs all day long. It's kind of a cool thing.
it is. I wonder whether because of the miniature train, model train that's over by Larky Park, whether they just felt like that was like, let's double down on the kind of the train theme because it is very cool. I don't notice it as much anymore, but I remember it made noises and you'd hear the bells winging and
It's got the
the
train whistle.
yeah, there's a chain that kids can
So,
pull to make the horn blow, the whistle blow.
yeah, it's
So
very Home
uh,
Depot.
one of the things that is great about local hardware stores is they have customer service just off the charts usually.
Mhm.
Obviously, every store will be a little bit different,
Yeah.
but I know that if I go in that store in particular and others too, that I can ask a question. I know a lot. I don't usually need to ask questions, but so when I ask a question, it's not an entry level question. It is the next level up.
Yeah.
Uh, and most of the time, the first person I talk to can explain to me not only where it is, because that's kind of low level, everybody can do that, but like how to use it and why you might use one thing over another.
Mhm.
And oh, what are you using it for? Because this other product might actually be better for what you're using it.
Oh,
And if you're going to be painting something, what surface are you painting? And here's the new formula of paint that because paint has been changing a lot over the last 20 years because they're outlawing certain products. And so certain things are paints are better for different surfaces going over an older paint. And I can't keep track of that stuff. And there's always somebody there to answer those more detailed questions.
yeah.
One of my favorite hardware stores ever was a Ace Hardware up in Dixon. I lived in Dixon for a couple of years. It's a farming community just south of Davis along Highway 80. And the same brothers, or well, it was brothers, I think it was started by their parents and maybe even a grandparent, owned this hardware store in this farming community. And if you know anything about farmers, farmers know how to fix everything.
Yeah.
They are mechanics, they are woodworkers, they are plumbers,
Yeah.
they are electricians. There is nothing a farmer can't do.
Yeah.
And so the brothers who were the current generation when I was living there who ran it, they were part of this farming community and their wealth of knowledge was like no hardware store I've ever been in. And at the time, Melissa and I bought our first house and we were doing a bunch of work ourselves and some stuff that I kind of knew theoretically about but hadn't done yet myself. And so I had tons of questions and I would go into this store and it was one of those where it had a small street front and that they had slowly over the decades acquired the stores around them and behind them. And it was like this little mystery, like the shelves were all the way to the ceiling and the aisles were narrow and you'd follow it. You'd like all of a sudden you realize you went through a doorway and you're in a different building, but it's the same store. And they go, oh yeah, follow me. And you like follow them through and find whatever this plumbing part is that was, had this right diameter, but the right thread and made of the right material. And oh, it can't touch that other material. And I learned so much from those guys, and it was such a bummer shortly after I moved away that it burned down. Uh,
Oh,
I
yeah.
suppose when you have a 150-year-old building, there's a electrical someplace that it went bad, which is kind of ironic. You go to the hardware store to fix your wiring, and their wiring is what caused them to burn the
Yeah.
whole place down. And they rebuilt. It as kind of like a modern, I'll say, superstore. And it was, a really nice store, a warehouse and big lights and looked sharp and shiny and clean, but it just wasn't the same. Even though the same guys were there, it just wasn't the same as walking through the little doorways.
It's funny how people can get nostalgic about a hardware store because I
Well,
see you doing that right now.
well, it's because they're tied to it. It's the pride of ownership of your own home, right? They're helping me be a good homeowner,
Yeah.
maybe a good spouse or whatever, a good son's, like there's a hardware store in Alameda, which is probably the smallest hardware store I've been in, and it's a joint hardware store pharmacy.
Mhm. Oh,
So it's
wow.
got this old-fashioned pharmacy, right? So the pharmacy is competing with CVS,
Mhm.
and the hardware store is competing with Home Depot, which is directly across the bridge there at High Street. And uh, the so I grew up in Alameda. My mom still lived there until she passed away. So I would, I'd go over and she'd like, oh, this is broken. Can you fix it? And I'd go over to the N hardware store, and I'd be there, like maybe once a month, and they recognized me, and we'd have small chit chat about stuff and talk about the
Hmm.
local politics, and it was like I was a family member because that hardware store had been there since my dad was a kid, probably.
Wow.
Um, you ever see It's a Wonderful Life and Grauer store, not Grauer. What's anyway? The pharmacy. It felt like that. It felt like Old Man Gower. That was it. Old
Oh,
Man Gower was up there measuring out pills and things, and it was also the hardware store. It's kind of I really think it's the nerve center of every town because everybody has to go to the hardware store.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's in a changing world, it's something that has stayed relatively the same.
And you can't really outsource it, right? It's not, you can't Amazon everything. I mean, there's
Yeah,
certain things that you can Amazon, but the chances are if you go to the hardware store, you need it today.
you need it now. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the hardware store over in Orinda? We went in one day. I can't remember what we needed, something, I think for that condominium on Brookwood
The,
that we
the
had.
True Value that's right across from Pete's Coffee.
Yes, and it still has the old wooden floors, the kind
Yeah.
of the old wooden floors. And I don't think I had ever been in that store before until you and I went in one day. And but the smell of it was so reminiscent of being in other old-fashioned hardware stores. It was really cool. I'm glad they haven't changed that. uh,
Yeah.
and put in some fancy dancy floor because I just think it's a cool thing that they've kept that old one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, another one of my favorite places, hardware stores to go to for that very reason. Um, all right. Well, so they have tons of light bulbs at Ace Hardware, and I bet somebody there can help you. In fact, I had a light bulb question the last time I was buying light bulbs at Ace Hardware. I have a drop light. So a drop light is a light bulb that's at the end of an extension cord
Yeah.
that's got a hook on it. You can
Oh, yeah.
crawl underneath the house and take it with you.
My dad
And
used to when he worked on cars.
exactly. And so
Yep.
typically you could buy what was called a heavy duty light bulb specifically for that. Because you can imagine as you're pulling it along underneath the house or moving it around that you bump it and it's fragile, it would break, especially when it was hot, it was more fragile.
Yeah.
So this heavy duty, the glass was a little bit harder, the filament was a little bit more sturdy, and it wasn't super efficient. You wouldn't want to use that every place in your house.
Yeah.
So I was like looking for the heavy duty. For my drop light, a heavy duty light bulb. And so I stopped to ask the guy, and the guy goes, "Oh, we don't sell that anymore." He goes,
Oh,
"Because now all the LED lights, they have a plastic shell on the outside, not glass, and the LED is a fragile filament. In fact, here's the one I would use on mine at home."
oh,
And
wow.
just an example of why I love the hardware store. I mean, it was a light bulb. Even I
Yeah.
needed help with a light bulb. I mean, I didn't cry about it. I mean, maybe I would have, but
I'm, I think you're going to right now, though. I actually stumped a guy at the hardware store a couple months ago.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, I think I remember him walking away and shaking his head, but might have been my
I do
imagination.
that all the time. It may not be that he was stumped.
So, I'm a quilter and I use I use blue painter's tape for my English paper piecing and I had run out. So I drove down to my favorite Ace hardware store and I go to the paint section and there's a whole section of painter's tape, but none of it is blue. There's green and there's, I don't know how many other different colors. And it threw me off a little because I'm used to blue painter's tape, and I thought, I wonder if the green is different for some reason, because why would it be green instead of blue? And I must have had a puzzled look on my face, and this guy comes up and he's like, "Can I help you?" And I said, I need blue painter's tape. And he's like, "Yeah, we're out." He goes, "What are you painting?" And I said, "Well, I'm not painting anything." He goes, "Oh, well, what are you using it for?" And I said, "I'm using it to make quilts." And the look on his face.
Yeah, no
And I
doubt.
was trying to explain to him what I'm doing with it. And he was like, "Okay, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I'm sure any of these will be fine." At which point he walked away like, "Uh-huh, sure. Okay, lady."
All right.
Green worked just as well as the blue. So
Yeah, the green is fine. The green is a specific manufacturer, but it's basically the same as the blue tape.
yeah.
It has those painter's tapes, all that category of tape, they have just a little bit less adhesive glue on it so that they release when you pull it off without damaging the surface. And so the green one that I think you're referring to is one that has a little bit sharper edges to it. So the glue's a little bit tighter than what we typically get with most of the blue tape that we get. Um, and so it'll seal the edge of it a little bit better, but it still releases just like the blue tape.
Well, if I ever use it for what it's actually meant for, I'll remember that.
Do you ever roll it around your hand backwards to get all that quilt lint off of your clothing?
Absolutely. Yes.
You should have told him that's what you were doing.
You wonder what he goes home and tells his wife at night. "You wouldn't believe what this lady came in today and wanted blue painter's tape for."
That's right. She said, "How do I get She asked me, how do I get the whiteout off my computer monitor? And I wasn't sure which tape to use. All right. Well, I think that that's enough of our love affair with the hardware store.
Yeah.
We encourage you, as a general rule of thumb, to shop locally, and the hardware store certainly counts with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's reasons why we shop at Home Depot and Lowe's as well, but the local business, supporting local businesses is always an added bonus to the hardware store.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other final thoughts, Sherry, that you have?
No, I think I'm good. I've told you all my stories, all my hardware store. Well, no, I think I'm good. I've told you all my hardware store stories. It's easy for me to say.
We got hardware. We got hardware over back here. Those are all our awards over there. We got hardware.
That is hardware, yes.
See
Oh,
all
yeah.
our awards over there? Oh, that's not the kind of hardware we're talking about. All right. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking out the real story with Adam and Sherry this week. We look forward to seeing you next time. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe and refer us to your friends and family. And that's it for this week. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.